Today's Storytime video is a tale of how one CEO learned from bitter medicine so that you don't have to, if you take his lessons to heart. As leaders, we're going to make mistakes. It's just part of that whole human being thing. Hopefully, we learn from them. I'm pretty sure my client, Christian, learned from his particularly painful lesson having to do with transparency. So, get a nice cup of tea, kick back, and I'll tell you a story. Chapter 1. The Opportunity of a Lifetime. Christian owned a small tech company with 80 employees. They were an upbeat team that reveled in the family feel and creative latitude they had in their jobs. They also felt taken care of by the healthy bonuses they got at the end of each of the last 3 years, the result of rising profits. A big conglomerate approached Christian with a surprisingly large and enticing offer for his business. But there were 2 challenges for him. The first was that the sale was predicated on his raising the bottom line to a degree he thought might be too much of a stretch. And the second was that they'd be moving production to a company overseas. Christian was excited but hesitant. He had mixed feelings. He didn't know if he could realistically raise the profit margin, and he cared about his team and wanted to keep production local. But the buyers wouldn't budge, and the opportunity was so enticing, the payday was big, that Christian decided to go for it. The way he decided to take care of his team was to give everyone 6 months severance at the close of sale so that they could share in the bounty and also have time to find some other work. Chapter 2. Oh, the tangled webs we weave. Christian considered telling the team, but decided it would screw things up, that it was better to just operate as usual. So he set his sights on creating a plan to generate the increase in profit. Now, let's freeze the story for a second. I know that some of what I'm going to share about Christian's choices will sound like terrible leadership, and some of it will make your eyes roll. But this story and its entanglements are not that unusual. Leaders go through things like this all the time. We get caught up in the wanting of things and lost in sight of that wanting. And it makes us say or do things we normally wouldn't. We're never at our best when this happens, so a bit of compassion for Christian, and maybe for ourselves. And hey, this does have a storybook ending, so don't go anywhere. Now back to the story. Alright, so Christian decided not to tell his team because he wanted what he wanted. Putting his new profit margin raising plan in motion, he began to enthusiastically cheerlead for bigger sales and more efficiency. The team was put off by this and thought it was really odd because Christian had never acted like this before. More than anything, they were distracted. And when the big gains didn't happen, he started to pressure them. Another thing he had never done before. The team got really irritated by the pressure, and it was obvious to them that something was off. A lot of water cooler talk centered on wondering if the company was in trouble, and some people started looking for jobs to protect themselves and their families. At a team meeting, Christian was asked, "What's going on?" He had difficulty making eye contact, and he made up some story about how, after 3 years that are up, companies often plateau, and said that the best practice was to push teams hard so they'll get out there and kick butt, like that was industry standard practice. They all just looked at him. And right after that meeting is when he sought coaching. It didn't take long for Christian to recognize the extent to which he had lost himself and breached trust with himself and his team. He saw how his strong desire for the big payday drove his out-of-character behavior and outright lying, and the fear that if he told his team about the possible sale that some employees would leave, and if key team members left, that would limit his chance of improving the bottom line. And he feared that he'd be left with not only no sale, but having lost core team members. It's really a great example of how desire and fear work hand in hand to drive us to shoot ourselves in the foot. Christian didn't just feel badly, he felt shame about how he had shown up and wanted to clean things up. We discussed that transparency doesn't mean we have to tell everyone everything. And he got it, and he sat with that. But he decided that given how he handled things, that his gut said that telling them the entire backstory was the right thing to do, so we prepped him to allow his vulnerability and to simply own whatever he felt moved to own, regardless of consequence. By the time he was ready to face the music, he was in a place where he could allow that they would likely have very strong feelings and views about what he had done, that he wanted to honor the team and return, if they were willing, to being in partnership together. Chapter 3. True Confessions. He gathered the team. He explained and apologized for his off behavior and the pressure he had leveraged, as well as its impact on them. He told them about the offer he received, his excitement, his fear if he told them they might leave, and his plan to give them each 6 months of severance as an expression of compensatory gratitude. And he shared how wrong it felt to withhold what was going on from them, and most of all, for his outright lying. He acknowledged that he just didn't know how to handle the situation, that he got totally hooked into getting such a big payday, but that was no excuse for the breach of trust, and that they all deserved more respect than that. He closed with saying that the sale offer was still on the table, but that he didn't know how or whether to proceed and wanted their input. Chapter 4. Forgive me not. The team was very angry and did beat him up verbally for a while, but they were also somewhat disarmed by his newfound transparency and the courage it took to vulnerably own all that he'd done. They did not like the idea of losing their jobs, but that 6-month severance was very tempting. Christian told them that he wanted them as partners in this decision, and acknowledged that the only way the sale even had a chance of happening was if they were all on board and went for it together, aligned. He and I had run numbers prior to the meeting, and based on that, to further incentivize the team to go for it, he told them that if they did decide to go for it, that he would up the severance package to 9 months. For him, this was also part of cleaning up his behavior and coming back into balance. A costly one, yes, but it still felt right to him. Chapter 5. The buy-in to the buy-out. The team ultimately bought in and went for it, and it brought them together perhaps more than ever. They really worked it and nearly reached the threshold required, but it wasn't enough to make the sale work. So what happened? They all celebrated a great year of working in harmony and thriving, got huge bonuses, and kept the jobs they loved. Fade to black. When we give up strategizing how to manipulate our teams and instead let down our walls and communicate transparently, the stress of trying to get people to do this or that drops away. In its place can be a profound sense of freedom in leadership. As I said before, being transparent doesn't mean we have to share every aspect around what we're thinking or feeling or doing. Discernment about what is most important, relevant, and appropriate to share is essential. Yes, when learning to lead transparently, we may share a little too much, or not enough at times, but with practice over time, we learn where that sweet spot is. We all have the capacity to expand and deepen our awareness, and we all have the capacity to be open and honest, to lead authentically and transparently. We all have the capacity to do this, and the time to do this is always in the now. There's a lot more content on the evolvingceo.com website, as well as info on how we can connect. I'll leave the link down below so you can check it out. Lead wisely.